The single father had 43 minutes to reach the interview that could change his daughter's future. Then he saw an elderly woman collapse beside a disabled car in the rain, and the decision in front of him became larger than any job. Ethan Carter tightened his father's faded navy tie, while 8-year-old Lily watched from the doorway of their Chicago apartment. The position at Hayes Industrial Group offered stable hours, health insurance, and enough income to stop treating every repair bill like an emergency. Ethan had spent 12 years maintaining heating, cooling, and building control systems. 3 years earlier, his wife Emily died after a short illness, leaving him to raise Lily alone. Since then, temporary contracts had kept him afloat, but never secure. The instability had not arrived because Ethan lacked experience. His former employer merged with a national contractor and eliminated the local facilities team. For 6 months, Ethan moved between school repairs, emergency furnace calls, and short-term building audits. Some weeks paid well. Others produced more promises than invoices. He kept rent current, but the family emergency account had fallen below 1 month's expenses. Lily needed dental work before winter, and the least expensive health plan carried a deductible Ethan could not comfortably meet. Hayes had selected him from more than 100 applicants. The first interview tested technical knowledge. The second reviewed leadership. The final panel would determine whether he could manage people, capital planning, and emergency response across 7 sites. Ethan had spent nights learning the company's equipment portfolio and turning old project notes into a concise presentation. He was not chasing a title. He wanted predictable work that allowed him to remain a father without treating every school call as a threat to his income. Emily had been the better planner. She kept duplicate calendars, labeled savings envelopes, and believed every difficult decision improved when written down. After her death, Ethan found a note inside their household binder. Stability is not a life without emergencies. It is knowing what matters when one arrives. He carried a copy in his wallet beside Lily's latest school photograph. On the morning of the interview, the sentence felt encouraging. Less than an hour later, it would become a demand. Lily handed him a paper, star-cut from yellow construction paper. For the interview, Ethan placed it inside his suit pocket. This may be my strongest qualification. Your strongest qualification is knowing how to fix everything. I still cannot fix your bedroom clock. That clock is unreasonable. He laughed, dropped her at school, and joined the traffic moving toward downtown. His final interview for Senior Facilities Operations Manager began at 9. He had left enough time for rain, congestion, and one wrong turn. He had not planned for a sedan sitting sideways on Madison Street Bridge with steam rising beneath its hood. A younger woman stood beside the driver's door, trying to support an elderly passenger in a thin sweater. Cars changed lanes and continued. Ethan slowed. The dashboard clock read 8:37. If he stopped, he would probably be late. If he continued, the older woman might remain exposed to cold rain while traffic moved within feet of her. He pulled onto the shoulder and switched on his hazard lights. Before he opened the door, Ethan called emergency services and reported the exact location. Then he crossed the slick pavement, stopping far enough away not to frighten either woman. My name is Ethan. An ambulance is coming. May I help you reach my truck? The heater is running. The younger woman looked relieved. Yes, please. My aunt became dizzy when the engine failed. Ethan asked the elderly woman whether she could walk with support. She nodded. He and her niece guided her to the pickup without lifting her unnecessarily. Inside, he turned the heat higher and offered a sealed bottle of water. The younger woman wrapped a dry work jacket around her aunt's shoulders. I am Victoria, she said. This is Margaret. Ethan checked Margaret's breathing and asked whether she had diabetes, heart trouble, or medication nearby. Margaret explained that she had skipped breakfast before a medical appointment. Victoria found a packet of crackers in her handbag, and Margaret ate slowly while they waited. At 8:44, Ethan called a recruiter. This is Ethan Carter. I am scheduled for the 9 o'clock facilities interview. I have stopped at a medical emergency on Madison Street Bridge. Emergency services are coming, but I will be late. I understand if the panel cannot wait. The recruiter thanked him for calling and said she would notify the committee. She did not promise an exception. Victoria heard the company name and looked at him more carefully. Hayes Industrial Group was her company. She had been traveling with her aunt to visit a neighborhood training center without assistance or a driver. Ethan did not know her surname, and she did not reveal it while Margaret still needed attention. The ambulance arrived at 8:52. Paramedics determined that Margaret's dizziness was probably caused by low blood sugar and cold, but they recommended evaluation at a nearby hospital. Victoria prepared to accompany her. "Go to your interview," she told Ethan. "We are safe now." Ethan gave the paramedic his contact information as a witness, retrieved his jacket, and ran back through the rain. He reached his pickup at 8:58. By the time he entered the Hayes lobby, the panel had already made a decision that could end his candidacy before anyone heard why he was late. Ethan arrived at 9:18 with rain darkening his shirt and his father's tie slightly crooked. The receptionist checked his name and called Human Resources. A recruiter named Jennifer Collins came to the lobby. "Mr. Carter, the panel has moved to another scheduled interview," she said. "Our standard policy treats a missed final interview as a withdrawal unless a documented emergency qualifies for rescheduling." I called from the bridge. "Emergency services can confirm the incident. I see the note. The committee chair has not reviewed it yet." Ethan could have demanded special treatment. Instead, he asked for the policy and the process to request reconsideration. Jennifer gave him a short form and explained that the chair would decide within 2 business days. "Thank you," Ethan said. "I know the panel's time matters. I only asked that they review what happened before closing the application." He completed the form in the lobby, attached the emergency service incident number, and left. Disappointment followed him down the stone steps, but regret did not. Margaret was safe. The choice remained, right, even if the result hurt. At the hospital, Victoria learned that Margaret needed fluids and observation, but faced no serious danger. Once her aunt was comfortable, she called Jennifer. "I was part of the emergency that delayed Ethan Carter," Victoria said. "I can verify the time and location, but I will take no part in deciding whether he is hired." She submitted only the ambulance record and what she had witnessed. Ethan had called before the interview and supplied the incident number, so the committee chair approved the same emergency reschedule available to any candidate. The hiring decision remained with the panel. Margaret listened from the hospital bed. "He helped us. Give him the job. He deserves thanks, not an advantage." Then do not let fear of looking unfair become a reason to reject him. Victoria understood. She asked for her involvement to be disclosed and stepped away from the process. The boundary was simple. Her statement explained his delay, but it could not prove he was qualified. Margaret left the hospital that afternoon with instructions to eat regularly and follow up with her physician. Before going home, she wrote Ethan a note on hospital stationery. She did not mention Victoria's title. She thanked him for seeing a person before seeing an inconvenience. Hours later, Ethan received a call asking him to return to Hayes the following morning. He assumed the emergency had been accepted. He did not know that the woman on the bridge would be waiting inside the building, or that her identity would make the second interview more complicated rather than easier. That evening, Ethan told Lily the truth over vegetable soup. He explained that he had arrived late, submitted a request, and might receive another interview. "Would you stop again?" she asked. "Yes. Even if they say no tomorrow." A good decision does not become bad because it costs something. Lily considered this and placed a second paper star beside his bowl. Then one is for the interview, and one is for making the good decision. The next morning, Ethan arrived 40 minutes early. Jennifer met him in the lobby and led him to a conference room where 3 panel members and an ethics officer waited. Before technical questions began, the officer explained that the chief executive officer had witnessed the bridge emergency and had provided a verification statement. She had recused herself from his hiring process. "Do you wish to continue knowing that information?" the officer asked. Ethan was surprised. Who is the chief executive officer? The conference room door opened. Victoria entered alone, wearing a charcoal business suit. Recognition came before introduction. "Victoria Hayes," she said. "I owe you clarity before the panel proceeds. Margaret is my aunt. I confirmed the emergency because I was there. I will not score your interview, review your references, or influence the final vote. If my involvement makes you uncomfortable, the company will arrange an independent panel at another location. Ethan absorbed the revelation. You are the chief executive officer. Yes. Did you reopen the interview? No. Company policy allows rescheduling after a verified emergency. The committee chair approved your request before receiving any opinion from me. My statement supplied evidence you were entitled to submit. Ethan looked toward the ethics officer, who confirmed the sequence and offered him the written record. Ethan read it before deciding. I would like to continue with this panel, he said. I applied because I believe I can do the work. That is what I want them to judge. Victoria thanked him and left the room. The panel spent 90 minutes examining his knowledge of preventive maintenance, energy controls, contractor safety, emergency planning, and labor scheduling. Ethan answered from experience. When he did not know a software feature, he said so and described how he would learn it. During a tabletop exercise, the panel gave him a failed cooling system, a crowded production schedule, and an incomplete contractor report. Ethan did not begin by ordering repairs. He identified the equipment at risk, moved employees away from a potentially unsafe mechanical room, requested temperature and pressure readings, and established communication intervals. Production can wait until we understand the hazard, he said. A fast restart is not successful if someone gets hurt. The panel increased the pressure. A major customer threatened penalties. A backup unit showed unstable readings. Ethan divided the response into safety, diagnosis, business continuity, and documentation. His plan was not dramatic. It was controlled and technically credible. After the exercise, the facilities director asked how he managed technicians who made mistakes. First, I determine whether the problem is skill, information, workload, or disregard, Ethan answered. The response should match the cause. Correcting every mistake with punishment teaches people to hide problems. Ignoring repeated disregard teaches everyone that standards are optional. The panel ended without revealing its scores. Jennifer told Ethan a decision would take 3 days because references and certifications still required verification. As he reached the lobby, Victoria approached with the ethics officer present. My aunt asked me to thank you again, she said. She is home and doing well. I am glad. I also want to apologize for allowing my identity to become part of a process that should belong to your qualifications. You disclosed it and stepped away. That is all I can ask. Victoria handed him no check, gift, or promise. She gave him Margaret's written thank you note, which contained only gratitude and no offer of influence. Ethan placed it beside Lily's paper stars. The interview was over, but another obstacle was already moving through the company. One panel member believed no decision involving Ethan could ever look impartial again. That afternoon, the panel chair raised one final concern. Choosing Ethan might look like repayment, while rejecting him could punish him for helping Victoria. The company resolved it with an external technical assessment given to both remaining finalists. The same test for both of us. Ethan asked. The same data, time, and scoring, Jennifer said. The first part involved reviewing 5 years of maintenance data and identifying the largest unrecognized risk. Ethan discovered that emergency repairs had decreased while short cycling in several rooftop units had increased. The reports looked positive because failures were being reset quickly, but the pattern indicated control problems that could shorten equipment life and raise energy costs. The second part required a 30-minute presentation to assessors who had no knowledge of the bridge incident. Ethan proposed a stage controls audit, sensor calibration, and replacement plan based on failure probability rather than equipment age alone. He also included training for in-house technicians so the company would not depend entirely on one vendor. The assessors ranked Ethan first in technical judgment and second in finance. Monica Reed, the other finalist, built the stronger forecast, while Ethan produced the safer and more practical field plan. References confirmed his experience. He won by a narrow margin, with finance training included in his 6-month development plan. Before accepting, Ethan called a former supervisor and asked whether moving into management would pull him too far from technical work. The supervisor reminded him that leadership could multiply good judgment if he remained close enough to hear the people doing the work. The danger is not leaving the mechanical room, the man said, is forgetting how the room feels to everyone still inside it. Ethan added one question to his offer review. How often could he visit each site instead of managing entirely through reports? The operations director committed to a regular field schedule. The answer helped him accept. Jennifer called him on Friday afternoon. The committee has completed its process. We would like to offer you the Senior Facilities Operations Manager position, contingent on the standard certification and background checks. Ethan sat inside his pickup outside Lily's school and closed his eyes for a moment. Thank you. May I review the schedule and benefits before accepting? Of course. The written offer gives you 5 business days. He did not accept from emotion. That evening he reviewed the salary, insurance, retirement contribution, on-call rotation, travel, and probation terms. The position required 1 week of travel each quarter and rotating emergency coverage. Ethan arranged backup care with Lily's grandmother and confirmed that travel dates could be scheduled in advance when possible. Lily studied the benefits page as though it were a treasure map. Does health insurance mean you stop making the worried face when I cough? It means the worried face may become slightly less dramatic. He accepted the next morning. On Saturday, Ethan and Lily built a new family calendar across the refrigerator with colored magnets. Blue meant school, green meant work travel, and yellow meant protected time together. Lily held up the only red magnet. Emergency? She asked. A real one, not a meeting someone forgot to schedule. She placed it at the bottom instead of on a date. Then it stays here until we need it. They celebrated the offer with pancakes shaped like gears. Ethan's first gear lost 3 teeth when he tried to turn it. Lily repaired the design with strawberries and announced that presentation mattered less than structural support. For one quiet morning, the new job was not a title or a rescue. It was a calendar they could see, breakfast they had time to ruin, and the possibility that planning might replace some of their fear. The offer solved his immediate uncertainty. It did not solve the deferred maintenance problem he would inherit on his first day. Hayes Industrial Group operated 7 manufacturing and office sites across Illinois. Ethan's predecessor had retired after warning that budgets favored visible renovations over mechanical systems hidden behind walls. Within 2 weeks, Ethan found more than 800 open work orders, inconsistent contractor records, and 3 critical cooling units running without reliable backup. The backlog was not one person's failure. Site managers used different priority codes. Contractors closed work orders after temporary resets. Technicians wrote urgent warnings inside free text fields the reporting dashboard did not display. Finance saw declining emergency totals and assumed risk was improving. Ethan spent his first month on loading docks, roofs, boiler rooms, and night shifts. He asked technicians which alarm they feared, which spare part was always missing, and which temporary repair had quietly become permanent. Some employees expected another manager collecting opinions before returning to headquarters. Ethan published a weekly action list showing what had been accepted, rejected, or scheduled and why. At the oldest plant, technician Rosa Martinez showed him a ventilation fan with a crack support. 3 requests had been downgraded because the fan still operated. It runs, Rosa said. That is not the same as being healthy. Ethan removed the area from service until structural inspection. Production complained about the lost space, but the inspection found the crack extended beneath a mounting plate. A controlled repair took 1 shift. Failure during operation could have injured someone below. The incident increased trust but also created resistance. Plant managers feared Ethan would shut down every aging asset. He created a decision matrix separating immediate hazards, monitored degradation, compliance gaps, and routine reliability work. Not every defect required stopping production. Every defect required an owner, evidence, and a deadline. He also audited vendor invoices. One national contractor charged emergency rates for scheduled work because sites called after purchase orders expired. Ethan negotiated a regional agreement with transparent response tiers. The savings funded vibration sensors for critical equipment, including the chiller that would soon dominate his probation period. At home, the new role changed family routines. Ethan left earlier on site days, while Lily's grandmother handled 2 school drop-offs each week. Ethan protected dinner unless a genuine emergency intervened. When he missed one school music rehearsal because of a boiler shutdown, he told Lily before the event and attended the final performance. "I do not need you at every practice," Lily said. "I need you to tell me when the plan changes." The sentence sounded like something Emily would have said. Ethan wrote it in his management notebook. Employees, like children, could handle difficult news better than unexplained silence. The largest risk sat beneath a suburban electronics plant. Its central chiller served clean production rooms where temperature and humidity had to remain stable. A vibration report showed increasing bearing wear, but replacement had been postponed twice because the unit had not yet failed. Ethan presented the findings to the Capital Committee. The replacement cost was high, and shutting the chiller down would interrupt production for nearly 30 hours. Finance proposed waiting until the scheduled winter closure 6 months later. "The data does not support 6 months," Ethan said. "It may survive. If it does not, the uncontrolled shutdown will last longer and could damage inventory." One executive asked whether his warning was overly cautious during his probation period. Ethan did not take the challenge personally. He showed the vibration trend, oil analysis, load profile, and absence of redundancy. He proposed renting a temporary chiller, completing the replacement over a holiday weekend, and moving the highest-risk production to another site. The committee delayed its decision for a week to verify the analysis. Before the week ended, a temperature sensor alarmed during the night shift. The bearing had not failed, but the event shortened the safe window. The company now had 72 hours to choose a controlled shutdown or gamble on a machine already warning them to stop. Victoria attended the emergency meeting but did not take over. The plant manager, finance director, safety lead, and Ethan each presented. Ethan acknowledged the operational cost of his recommendation and the uncertainty in failure prediction. Then he explained what would happen if the bearing seized at full load. The committee approved the controlled shutdown. Ethan coordinated the temporary equipment, contractor permits, employee communications, and production transfer. A supplier delivered the wrong connection flange 6 hours before installation. Instead of improvising an unsafe adapter, Ethan contacted a local fabricator certified for the pressure rating. The correction cost 4 hours, but preserved the schedule. The replacement finished 26 minutes before the holiday window ended. Inspection of the removed bearing showed deeper damage than external readings had revealed. It might have lasted weeks. It might have failed the next day. The decision was validated not by catastrophe, but by avoiding the need to find out. The financial result was mixed. Hayes avoided an uncontrolled outage, but the temporary chiller, expedited fabrication, and holiday labor exceeded Ethan's estimate by 12%. Finance asked why the contingency had been too small. Ethan traced the difference to an outdated connection drawing and a supplier assumption no one had verified. He did not describe the overrun as the price of safety, and in the discussion, safety explained why the work had to proceed. It did not excuse weak preparation. He revised the site documentation standard, required field verification before critical equipment orders, and created a supplier checklist for temporary systems. The post-project meeting included night technicians, contractors, production planners, and finance. Rosa explained that field drawings had been unreliable for years, but technicians stopped reporting corrections because updates disappeared inside an engineering queue. The design group had no dedicated owner for existing building records. Hayes assigned a document control engineer and created a mobile process for technicians to submit marked changes with photographs. Approved revisions returned to the field within 10 business days. The fix cost less than one emergency fabrication and improved every future project. 1 month later, An insurer reviewing the plant asked for evidence supporting the shutdown decision. Ethan provided trend data, meeting records, inspection photographs, and the corrected procedures. The insurer accepted the response and recommended the risk register method for other sites. What had begun as a maintenance dispute became a company-wide model for documenting uncertain but serious hazards. The experience changed Victoria's capital meetings. She stopped asking only which projects produced the highest return and added two questions: which risk was becoming harder to reverse, and which warning had been repeated without an owner. Executives could still reject a proposal, but the decision and evidence remained visible. Technicians noticed the difference. Reports that once vanished into work order history now returned with a disposition. Some requests were denied because the evidence did not justify cost. Others moved faster because the consequence was clear. Trust did not mean every employee received the answer desired. It meant no one had to wonder whether an honest warning had been read. For Ethan, the post-mortem mattered as much as the successful replacement. The company had not hired him to be the hero of emergencies. It had hired him to build systems that made heroics less necessary. Victoria congratulated the team publicly and Ethan privately. He redirected praise toward technicians who had documented the trend before he joined. "You believe them," Victoria said. "They had been reporting the truth for months. I was only new enough to ask why no one acted." The chiller crisis established Ethan's credibility. 6 weeks later, one hurried signature nearly destroyed it. At the North River Components plant, an exhaust fan serving a coating line began shutting down on low airflow alarms. The line used chemicals that required continuous ventilation, so every trip stopped production automatically. A contractor replaced a pressure transmitter and reported stable readings during an unloaded test. The plant had already lost 9 hours. Chief Operating Officer Martin Vale called Ethan from a customer meeting and said another delay could cost Hayes a major contract. "The sensor was the fault," Martin said. "We need your restart approval before the second shift." Ethan reviewed the contractor report. The new transmitter responded normally. The fan vibration remained below the alarm limit, and the safety interlock passed a brief test. The numbers supported a restart, but the work package lacked a full load current reading. A night technician named Malik Owens had also attached a voice note saying he heard electrical chatter near the motor control cabinet after the previous sanitation cycle. The dashboard summary displayed. The contractor's completed repair, but not Malik's attachment. Ethan did not open the original work order. He had spent weeks being called overly cautious. The chiller shutdown had exceeded its estimate, and Martin had warned that another expensive stop during probation would require an explanation to the board. Ethan allowed that pressure to narrow his question from, "Is the system safe?" to "Can the available data justify restarting it?" At 3:40, he signed the authorization. The fan ran normally for 17 minutes. Then current spiked, an electrical arc flashed inside the cabinet, and smoke entered the service corridor. The protection system cut power. Employees evacuated without injury, but the coating line lost an entire batch and the plant remained closed through the night. Ethan reached the site as firefighters cleared the electrical room. Malik stood near the assembly area with the other employees. "I left a note about the cabinet," he said quietly. Ethan opened the work order on his tablet and found the attachment beneath the contractor summary. The timestamp was 6 hours before his approval. The preliminary evidence blamed a failed electrical connection. The document authorizing the restart carried only one name: Ethan Carter. Martin arrived before midnight. He told Ethan the contractor had declared the equipment ready and suggested that the incident report describe a vendor misdiagnosis followed by an unforeseeable electrical failure. "That is part of what happened," Ethan said. "It is not all of it. I approved the restart without reviewing the technician's note or obtaining a loaded current test. You relied on a qualified contractor. Do not volunteer conclusions before the investigation. I will not guess at the root cause. I will state what I did." Martin lowered his voice. "You're still on probation. Think carefully about making yourself the center of this report." Ethan understood the warning. He also understood that shifting every responsibility to the contractor would teach Malik exactly what the old reporting system had taught technicians for years. Management wanted observations only when they protected management. He entered his approval, the missing test, Martin's production request, and Malik's unheard warning into the initial timeline. He did not accuse Martin of ordering an unsafe restart. The final authority had belonged to Ethan, and he named it. At 2 a.m, Ethan returned home carrying the smell of smoke in his coat. Lily had fallen asleep on the sofa beside a poster board for her science project. He covered her with a blanket, then sat at the kitchen table and stared at the probation terms in his laptop. She woke and found him before dawn. Was there an emergency? Yes. Everyone is safe, but I made a bad decision. The company lost a great deal of work, and I may lose my job. Lily climbed into the chair across from him. She did not tell him everything would be fine. Ethan had taught her not to make promises without facts. Did you know it was a bad decision when you made it? I knew I was missing one check. I told myself the other information was enough because people wanted the line running. Will saying it was your fault fix the machine? No. It will help the people fixing it understand what happened. Hiding it would damage something else. Lily looked at the paper stars still attached to the refrigerator. Then the stars are not only for good decisions. What else are they for? Remembering who you are after a bad one. Ethan wrote the sentence beneath Emily's note in his wallet. The investigation lasted 5 days. Engineers found a loose power terminal that had overheated over time. Moisture from sanitation entered through a damaged conduit seal and accelerated the failure. The pressure transmitter had also been defective, so the contractor's repair was necessary, but it had never addressed the greater electrical risk. The review did not treat Martin's pressure as an excuse. It also did not pretend the pressure was irrelevant. The board required operations leaders to document schedule requests during safety decisions, while the final report held Ethan responsible for approving a loaded restart without complete evidence. Hayes issued him a formal warning. For 30 days, any restart involving a safety interlock required a second qualified approver. Ethan remained employed because he reported his own actions promptly, had not concealed evidence, and presented a credible correction plan. Victoria did not intervene in the consequence. The lost batch and overnight shutdown cost far more than the chiller overrun. Ethan faced the plant employees at the next shift meeting. Malik warned us, he said. Our dashboard hid his attachment, and I failed to open the full record. The system was weak. My decision was also wrong. We will correct both. Malik did not thank him for admitting the obvious. He asked whether technicians would have authority to block a restart when their concern remained unresolved. Ethan answered yes. A restart now required the person closing each field concerned to name the evidence used. Unresolved safety observations remained visible on the approval screen, and a technician who raised one could request review without a manager removing it. 1 month later, an air handler at another site developed an intermittent electrical smell during a customer production run. The readings appeared normal, and Martin asked whether the new rules were about to create another expensive delay. Ethan stopped the unit, brought the reporting technician into the inspection, and required a loaded electrical test. The team found heat damage behind a disconnect that routine infrared scans could not see from the cabinet door. A 4-hour repair prevented a likely failure. This time, Ethan's judgment was stronger, but not because he had become incapable of error. He had learned to build a decision that did not depend on one manager feeling certain under pressure. His probation review would now weigh a costly failure against an honest correction. For the first time since joining Hayes, Ethan did not know whether doing the next thing correctly would be enough to keep the future he and Lily had begun to build. The chiller had shown Ethan's technical skill. The restart failure had shown the limits of one manager's certainty. Together, they exposed a cultural problem. Technicians submitted warnings, but budget meetings favored projects with immediate visual results. Ethan created a risk register connecting each recommendation to safety, downtime, energy, and product impact. He also discovered that several experienced technicians were approaching retirement with no structured plan to transfer knowledge. One of them, 62-year-old Rosa Martinez, could diagnose the oldest building control panels by sound. No manual captured what she knew. Ethan proposed a paid apprenticeship with the city community college. Apprentices would receive classroom instruction, supervised hours, safety certification, and a path to full-time work. Senior technicians would receive mentoring time inside their schedules rather than being expected to train people while completing the same workload. The executive committee rejected the first proposal. The budget was too high, the completion timeline too long, and the projected return difficult to measure. Ethan rebuilt the proposal with contractor costs, retirement risk, overtime, and unfilled positions. Rosa identified work suitable for trainees, and Human Resources opened the same paid pilot to community college students and current hourly employees. The first application proved too complicated for people sharing computers or working day shifts. Hayes shortened it and added evening interviews without changing technical or safety standards. 6 apprentices earned places through the revised process. A teenager Ethan already mentored was too young, so he joined a separate public weekend workshop rather than receiving special access. The 6 selected apprentices ranged from 19 to 46. One had recently left military service. Another had worked in food service while completing electrical classes. Tasha Green, a single mother, had failed a certification exam once and nearly decided not to apply. She ranked highest in the hands-on assessment. Rosa initially resisted serving as a mentor. She had watched companies ask experienced employees to train replacements before eliminating their jobs. Ethan addressed the fear directly. Mentors received additional pay, protected training hours, and written assurance that apprentices expanded capacity rather than replacing current positions during the pilot. Rosa agreed to mentor Tasha after reviewing the terms with her union representative. Their first weeks were difficult. Rosa corrected every movement. Tasha interpreted the scrutiny as distrust. Ethan did not order them to get along. He asked each to describe what successful training required. Rosa needed evidence that Tasha respected hazards. Tasha needed corrections connected to reasons instead of tradition. They developed a practice. Rosa named the risk before the method, and Tasha repeated the reasoning before beginning. Their working relationship improved because neither was asked to surrender the concern beneath the conflict. The first apprentice class almost ended after a safety violation during week 3. One trainee entered a restricted mechanical area without completing the required lockout procedure. No one was injured, but the breach was serious. Several managers wanted immediate termination. Ethan reviewed the facts. The trainee had ignored a posted restriction, while the assigned mentor had also failed to secure the access door and document the orientation. Responsibility was shared, not erased. The trainee received a final warning, repeated safety training, and temporary removal from field work. The mentor received corrective coaching, and access controls were changed. When the trainee later completed the program, she became one of its most careful safety advocates. The safety breach also threatened funding. A board member argued that apprentices created unacceptable liability. Ethan presented incident data showing experienced contractors had committed similar violations under the old system without structured review. The pilot had not invented risk. It had made reporting and correction visible. The board continued funding, but required an external safety audit at 3 and 6 months. Auditors found gaps in access control, then confirmed the corrections. The program finished with no injuries and a higher rate of near-miss reporting than established contractor teams. Employees were not necessarily making more mistakes. They were becoming less afraid to reveal them. At graduation, Rosa gave Tasha the old diagnostic notebook she had carried for 20 years. Tasha accepted it only after Rosa made her promise to add corrections instead of treating every page as permanent truth. For graduates accepted full-time jobs through competitive openings. One continued school, and another joined a union apprenticeship closer to home. Hayes counted both departures as successful outcomes. A training program existed to create careers, not to trap people inside the company that funded it. Ethan's decision attracted criticism from both directions. Some thought it too lenient. Others thought the warning too severe. He explained the standard and documented the reasoning. Leadership did not require everyone to agree. It required the decision to survive honest examination. His formal probation review was scheduled for the next morning. After the restart failure, improved statistics and one successful correction might still not be enough to save his position. 6 months after the bridge, the facilities department had reduced critical work orders, improved energy performance, and completed the chiller replacement without a recordable injury. Ethan passed his probation review based on measurable results. The review also documented areas requiring improvement. Ethan answered too many after-hours calls personally instead of trusting the new rotation. His reports contained strong technical analysis, but sometimes buried the financial conclusion. He accepted the criticism and worked with his finance mentor to place decisions, costs, and uncertainty on the first page. The following Saturday, Ethan took Lily to an empty school parking lot to practice riding her bicycle without training wheels. He had promised the morning would belong to her. Halfway through the first lap, his phone rang with a pump alarm from the oldest plant. His instinct was to answer every question. Instead, he asked the on-call technician whether the alarm met an escalation threshold. It did not. The technician had isolated the pump, started the backup, and scheduled inspection. Ethan confirmed the plan and ended the call. "You did not go fix it," Lily said. "Someone capable is already fixing it. My job is also to let people do the work they are trusted to do." She pushed off again. Ethan released the back of the seat before. She noticed. Lily traveled half the length of the parking lot, turned too sharply, and landed on the grass. She looked shocked, then laughed. "You let go. You were ready. You could have warned me. That is fair. I am still improving communication." They spent another hour practicing starts, stops, and better warnings. The pump remained stable under the technician's control. Ethan returned home with grass on one knee and the unfamiliar relief of learning that responsibility did not require holding every handle forever. At home, stability arrived gradually. Health insurance covered Lily's dental treatment after the standard deductible. Ethan rebuilt the emergency account one paycheck at a time and replaced the pickup only when repair costs exceeded its value. He chose a used vehicle with a strong safety rating, disappointing Lily, who had voted for a red truck with unnecessary lights. The lights were necessary for morale, she argued. Morale does not make the loan payment. The new schedule did not remove every conflict. Ethan missed dinner during the chiller replacement and arrived late to a parent conference after a contractor injury at another site. He stopped promising perfect availability. He promised honest communication, backup care, and protected time whenever emergencies were not real. Victoria kept professional distance during his probation. She received operational reports through the same channels as other executives and never asked supervisors for informal updates about his personal life. Margaret occasionally requested lunch with Ethan and Lily, but invitations went through Ethan rather than the company. At the first lunch, Margaret brought enough food for 6 people and claimed hospital staff had ordered her never to skip a meal again. Lily asked whether the order applied forever. Margaret said she intended to interpret it that way. Victoria watched Ethan and her aunt argue about who had rescued whom on the bridge. The affection did not erase the power difference between a chief executive officer and an employee. She and Ethan named it rather than pretending it did not exist. Personal invitations remained separate from evaluations, and either person could decline without explanation. Trust grew because boundaries were visible. Neither rushed to transform gratitude into romance or career loyalty. Ethan remained free to challenge company decisions. Victoria remained responsible for judging proposals on evidence. Their friendship survived the moments when they disagreed, which made the easier moments believable. Only then did Victoria invite him to discuss a personal matter outside work. She asked through a message that made refusal easy. Ethan agreed to coffee at a public cafe after arranging care for Lily. Victoria told him that the bridge had changed how she thought about access and emergency preparation. Her aunt's dizziness was manageable because help arrived. The 2 women had been fortunate. Hayes employees commuting between sites did not always know how to report a roadside emergency or locate an exact address. Together with the safety department, She wanted to create travel kits and training. She asked Ethan to review the technical content as part of his paid role, not as repayment for the bridge. He agreed. The program included reflective markers, first aid supplies, battery chargers, water, emergency numbers, and guidance about maintaining distance and asking consent before touching a stranger. It also emphasized calling professionals rather than attempting repairs beside fast traffic. During the pilot, an employee used a kit after witnessing a motorcycle slide on wet pavement. She placed warning markers at a safe distance, called emergency services, and avoided moving the injured rider. Her report identified that one reflective marker was difficult to unfold while wearing gloves. The supplier redesigned the strap before kits expanded company-wide. The incident kept the program honest. It was not a tribute to Ethan or a polished story about kindness. It was equipment tested under real pressure, improved through feedback, and made available to employees who might face the same decision on another road. Margaret attended the first training and corrected Victoria whenever she exaggerated how helpless they had been. "I was dizzy," Margaret said. "I was not starring in a disaster film." Lily liked her immediately. Victoria and Ethan's friendship developed without becoming a condition of his career. She did not supervise him directly, and any performance decision involving him remained with operations leadership. They met at company events, apprenticeship reviews, and occasional family lunches. Emily's memory remained part of Ethan's home rather than an obstacle Victoria expected him to remove. One year after the rainy morning, Ethan returned to Madison Street Bridge with Lily for the launch of a safer roadside pull-off completed by the city. Hayes had contributed engineering support as part of a public-private transportation program, but the project included multiple local partners and independent oversight. The bridge looked ordinary under spring sunlight. Traffic continued with the same urgency. Near the new emergency marker stood Victoria and Margaret, each holding coffee. "Your aunt brought breakfast this time," Ethan said. Margaret handed Lily a pastry. "I have learned from my mistakes." Victoria asked Ethan the question she had carried since the emergency. "If you had known who I was, would you still have stopped?" "Your title would not have changed Margaret's condition or the rain." "That is not quite an answer." "Yes, I would have stopped." Lily unfolded the paper star Ethan had kept in his wallet. Its edges were worn, and the yellow had faded. "He says this helped with the interview," she told Victoria. "I believe his technical assessment helped more." The star helped with the technical assessment. No executive argued with Lily's logic. The apprenticeship had placed 4 graduates into full-time jobs. The remaining 2 completed additional certification. The chiller risk system had expanded to every Hayes site. None of those results came from one heroic act on a bridge. They came from a skilled man receiving a fair opportunity and then doing difficult work well. Ethan had not been hired because he rescued a chief executive officer. He had been allowed to re-enter a process because a verified emergency qualified under the same policy available to any applicant. He won the position through independent assessment, references, and judgment. Victoria's responsibility was not to reward him. It was to prevent her gratitude from distorting fairness in either direction. As they left the bridge, traffic moved past the place where Ethan once believed his future had disappeared. The interview had mattered, so had arriving on time. But the most important decision had occurred before any panel asked a question. Ethan saw people in danger and stopped without knowing what the choice would return. The greatest opportunities do not always arrive wearing success. Sometimes they appear in the rain, beside a stalled car, asking whether ambition can pause long enough for humanity to act. Ethan's future changed because skill met opportunity, not because kindness purchased a reward. Yet kindness made one thing possible. It kept him on the bridge long enough to protect a life and carried him away with the same character he later brought into every room he was trusted to lead.